to welcome everybody. I got my main man, Dr. Marcus Abreu, aka Yoda. And every week we're gonna try to come on here and we're gonna be talking about relationships. And Marcus is when it comes to relationships, he's definitely one of the best in our markets, and he's helped me tremendously. And I'm gonna be a little selfish here, but I got some relationship issues, and so this is an opportunity to not only talk about relationships and to help your relationships get better, understand yourself and your spouse better, but also for me in the journey that I'm currently in, trying to find a lifelong spouse, right? And I know a lot of people wouldn't come out and say that, Marcus, right? Like that is my goal. My goal is to find somebody that I'm madly in love with. Marry them and live a healthy life. So I do understand that though that is the goal, it's truly a lifelong goal, because once I get with this person and commit myself with them, like I will always need to check in with you. You know what I'm saying? I will always, because relationships change, situations change. You know what I mean? One day you might have money issues. Another day you might have a major health issue. Another day you might have, some emotion. There's so many things that people are dealing with, and so it's not just, going to a workshop one time or reading a book one time. It's a daily, constant progression and getting better. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's based on your habits. And we've talked about this before. Your habits are really what creates your life.
Yes.
You make it, your life is created by what you do on a regular basis. And it's estimated that about 45% of what we do is actually habitual. It's things that we don't think about. Habits are all the way from when you get up in the morning to what you do. Do you go to the bathroom and brush your teeth? Do you hit the snooze button? You hit the snooze button, that's a habit of procrastination immediately before you even get up. And so these habits also transfer into your relationships, because it's really habitual. It's what you do on a habitual basis to build your friendship, build your connection, build your understanding, build the respect, build the trust in the relationship that determines the growth of your relationship in the long run.
So Marcus, let's talk about these habits. I would imagine that there are good habits and there are bad habits, right? So let's focus on the good habits, right? So what are some good habits that couples can like today, right? Not tomorrow, not next week, not next year. What are some good habits that they can implement today to help improve their relationships?
So it's different with each couple, but it's rituals of connection. For example, if one thing that helps me and Michelle, especially during the day, me and Michelle get a chance to be around each other a lot. We both work from home now and everything. So that allows us a chance to be around each other a lot. But there's a lot of couples that don't have that. So one of the rituals of connection that a couple that might not have that chance of being around each other might be texting each other during the day. Sending sexy texts to each other on a regular basis. But for me and Michelle, one of the things that we do almost every morning, we might miss a morning here and there, is I'll usually come upstairs first. I'm usually doing either my meditation, doing my morning routine of some sort, and she'll come upstairs and then she'll sit on my lap and we have a talk about how you doing, what happened, what were some of your dreams, what are some of your things that you're doing today. And that might take anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. And then we kiss, she hugs me, she even leans against me. And then there's a ritual that we do where I get up to pick her up so that she can just stand up. But this is just a ritual that works for me and her. It's not a ritual that everybody has to have. This might not work for everybody.
Yeah.
It's finding those rituals of connection that you can do, because that really helps throughout the day. Because if we might not connect throughout the day, if we might not see each other or talk to each other, or we might be totally involved in what we're doing in our work, that morning connection helped us be able to set the tone for the day. Just like a lot of people set the tone in a negative way. their habit might be to start getting into an argument in the morning because they might have what's called negative sentiment override. They've
Well,
gotten to a point in their
hold on, Marcus. Hold on. Just say that word one more time. What was it?
it's just a technical term. That's why I glossed over it. It's called negative sentiment override. You can think of your relationship this way, kind of like a thermostat set. It's a set point. They do this with metabolism as well. So you might be familiar with this in the fitness field. But the theory is this: you have a set level in which you have either your metabolism or let's say your thermostat in your house, it's 73. So if it goes below 73, this thermostat will come up so that you can get heat, right? If you have a really fancy system, it can actually go both ways. So if it goes too low, you can get the heat to go on. If it gets too high, you can get the air conditioning to go on, right? So it kind of keeps you at that same level. What happens that over time, with whether it's work, children, whatever happens in relationships over time, which everybody has stresses, it's reality. It starts setting that level lower and lower of satisfaction and how you view your partner. And as you set that lower, what's called sentiment override, which is really a symptom, it's not a cause of the problem, is when a couple will constantly see each other, even little things. For example, somebody, unfortunately, let's say somebody left the door open. And then somebody's like, oh, you constantly leave the door open, as opposed to going like, oh, maybe they were really distracted and everything. So you give the person the benefit of the doubt, and that's positive sentiment override. Negative sentiment override is when you don't do that anymore. And that you think that in essence, your partner is fundamentally selfish. And that's why you have issues in your relationship. And so you constantly have, and it's just a mental thing. And people don't realize they do this, by the way. It happens kind of automatically as their relationship starts failing. And that's why even trying to fix that, trying to tell them, look, you have this negative something, all right, you got to start thinking positive about your partner, won't fix it, because that's not the issue. So people can't really see it.
Well, Marcus, I'm sorry. Just back up and say that one more time. I just want to be clear on what you're saying, right?
Yeah. So in the negative sentiment override, once people reach that stage in their relationship, that's when the relationship is going down. They have these blinders on where it kind of tells them, oh, the reason we're having problems is because my partner is selfish. They don't want to do this. They don't want to change. They're a slob. They don't, she's self-involved, she's too emotional, blah. They have all these negative things that they view their partner doing, as opposed to in a good relationship, when we're still in a positive relationship, we give our partner the benefit of the doubt, because there's enough goodwill built up in the bank account that you can give that benefit. And so that changes as the relationship starts getting worse and worse. And unfortunately, it's just that the average person waits 6.5 years, according to Gottman, in order to get help.
Wow.
So once they find the problem,
at that point, you got all this toxicity of 6 years, and what, you think you're gonna go see a counselor for once a week, and that's gonna automatically change? But so I definitely want to piggyback on what you just said, and I got a personal experience I want to ask you about. But so we're talking about rituals, and one of the rituals is to develop a connection with your spouse, right? So I would imagine you and Michelle do that. You try to do that every day. Now, you don't have to be perfect, right?
And you can call it a greeting. You can call it a greeting. Anytime that you're apart, when you come back together, you set a greeting, some type of way in which you both connect at that point. You might have to have, like, for example, if you both come home from work and one of you comes home sooner and kind of gets acclimated, the other person comes home from work, they still have a lot of issues, you might have to have a transition time. But that transition time can also be ritualized in a way where it lends to both of your natures, so that you can account for both, for all those things as well. So, but it's really a greeting. Whenever you come back together, you should really greet each other, because that can set the tone for the rest of the time that you're with that person. So you want to set a good tone.
Well, Marcus, I'll share an interesting story with you. So, when I was married, I remember I came home one day, or I don't know if it was me or if it was Jen that came home, and she came home and she was like, complaining about everything. I can't, this is not done, and this is not done, and like as soon as she walked into the door, like, oh my gosh, and at the time we were both at school. I was taking care of the baby. We were both working. It's just I had a lot going on, and she came into the door. She was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is not done, and this is not done, and this is not done, and da, 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 da." And I completely shut down.
Mhm.
Like I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just not, obviously she had a long day, a rough day. She's walking into a situation and she's like, oh my gosh, didn't ask me. Now I'm not pointing a finger. I'm just sharing a story, right?
Mhm.
She had a long day, I had a long day. She walked in and just went off, right? But the reason why I bring that up is because I think a lot of times you were saying sometimes we do these things subconsciously. We don't even think about it. Like we just walk into the house. Like that's how my mother was. Like she would come home, she would like I felt like sometimes my mom didn't feel comfortable unless she found something to argue about. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's a good thing to have a ritual when you come into the house to set the tone, right? Regardless what's
Mhm.
going on at work, in your personal life, what your boss did or your coworkers, setting a ritual that when you come home, maybe you need to give your spouse 10 or 15 minutes before you guys get into the car. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you greet each other with a hug and a kiss, regardless what's going on, right? The kids are
Mhm.
going crazy. This one's hanging from the chandelier. This one's about to put his hands in the electric outlet. Cool, right? But you know that our rituals, when you come home, first thing we're gonna do is point to each other and get that connection, like you talked about,
Yep.
which I think is important.
Well, a big part of it is this. So most people, and this is good news for anybody that's in a relationship, you don't have to be perfect. You're going to fight. You're going to have the instances where you talked about, and I can analyze that instance all the way around. I can say it's masculine and feminine dynamics. It's, it has to do with you arriving home. It has to do with understanding. I could actually look at it in a million different ways and give you all types of advice. But the thing that it comes down to is that none of us are perfect. And if we
Mm.
have enough, and this includes in the research when they were doing research on couples, it's been over the past 40 years that Gottman did research. Now there's probably thousands of others now doing research. But when Gottman started with Bob Levinson and Gottman, they were the only ones doing research. And when you said before that, I'm in the area, I'm really good with couples and everything like that. The only reason is because I'm standing on the shoulders of people that have been doing tons of research over the past 40 years. It's not like I'm coming up with, because that was one of the biggest things with therapists and counselors, and it still happens today. A lot of them are basically basing their from their training, but a lot of their training is still basic therapy. And when they come into the couples arena, they're not getting the scientific data. They're still using issues with like Rogerian psychology, which uses, or methods which actually use active listening. And active listening is not something that can help really a couple during a fight. It just doesn't help them. It has the people that relapse when they're taught active listening, because people will get results for a short period of time when they can actually, but once they realize that the skill level is not increasing and something happens, let's say just a moment like you said before, where you both were really stressed and you come into this environment and now you blow up at each other and you just shut down or blow up. The thing is that happens in every relationship, and the great relationships as well as in the not so great relationships. That's what the studies actually showed. It wasn't that these people didn't blow up at each other. They actually did have one secret weapon that all of them showed, which was called a repair attempt. And a repair attempt was basically, you might be in the middle of a fight and all of a sudden you do something silly because it's just like, let's say Michelle would stick out her tongue and make fun. That is a repair attempt. Repair attempts are really important. What happens in relationships that are in that negative sentimental override, they're at that stage in their relationship, repair attempts get ignored. even attempts that are like, let's stop this, we're not getting it, which is a repair attempt to, let's stop this, we're not getting anywhere. It gets ignored, and people keep on driving through and keep on fighting and having the argument. And that's a huge issue. But in good relationships and it's based on the friendship that's within the relationship that determines that repair, how well that repair attempt actually. So a lot of times we focus so much on the communication in the relationship I've at times I've said communication is a myth, and it's because it is a myth. Everybody, very well-meaning people, what they'll do is, let's say you have a couple that's been together for 40, 50, 60 years. You see them at a wedding and everybody's like, oh, you've been together for so long. They really don't know how happy they've been, but they seem happy. They've been together for that long, must be happy. I mean, who else would stay that long if they weren't happy, right? So we asked them, oh, what made you stay together? And one of them will say, usually the wife will say communication. The husband will say compromise. And then the wife will say, no, it's communication. The husband will go, oh, okay, thank you, sweetie. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, compromise, but it's they're very well-meaning, but they have no clue what made them stay together. They just know that they have a good friendship and that they are together. So they've never gone back and analyzed, why am I together and that couple over there isn't? So we have to turn to science for that. We have to turn to researchers to see if they have actually done that. And Gottman did it with over 3,000 couples over the past 40 years. He's been studying long-term studies that have been more than 20 years going, where they actually follow the marriages to see where they end up without any intervention, before doing any intervention. And they want to know where those marriages end up. And so they found out what makes marriages fail to the point where he's able and is able to teach it to others, which is part of the part training, able to predict a divorce by 91% accuracy, which means that he can tell what's going to happen from just watching a couple for 15 minutes have an argument or interact, and he's able to tell if they're going to be together by a 91% accuracy. And time has proved them right.
So Marcus, we're going to put like a bookmark right there. We are going to definitely go back to that right there, because that is powerful information. I want to jump back to the rituals real quick and communication. Yeah. So having these rituals, obviously you want to create them not only on a daily basis, but also probably on a weekly basis, something that you guys do to connect on a weekly basis, maybe on a monthly or 3-month basis as well.
It's rituals, different types of rituals, but you want to have daily rituals of connection on a regular basis. And the reason is because those habits are what sets that bar for your relationship. You see, what happens is that you're going to have bad days. You're going to have days where you don't feel like doing the habit of whatever it is. You're going to have days, but the point is that you need to make it part of your habitual lifestyle, that you do it when you like it or not. Like it.
Yes.
Exactly. And it's like exercise. It's like anything that you're trying to fix. And this is a major issue in relationships, because what happens is, and you see it online all the time, people are like, oh, does anybody have a solution? Can anybody give me an advice about this, about it? And what they want is a quick fix. They want something that somebody can tell them that they can do to give them a quick fix to the relationship problem. And there's no such thing. A relationship is so complex. There's so many different moving parts in a relationship that there's no quick fix. It's about the habits that you create in your life.
Yes.
But this is the thing. We do have a solution. Just because there's no quick fix doesn't mean that there's no solution.
Yes.
We in Gottman's research, which is part of what I teach, he set out 7 different principles that are what good marriages do, and principles that to try to avoid or learn how not, because in essence, a lot of what happens is that people get together out of chance. You get attracted to somebody, you start going out, there's some commonalities, you kind of fit together, you're in this honeymoon stage, and now you decide that you're going to commit to each other for life and you're going to get married. And then you end up having kids. And now you're in this situation where you might have not been greatly matched with your argument styles, with your conflict styles, which is a big part of the. So when we talk about communication, you need to talk about conflict styles because it's really a mismatch between conflict styles that's the problem. You see couples that can live for years and years and they scream at each other and everything, and they're fine because their conflict styles match. It's when you have that mismatch that you end up having an issue.
Conflict style. That's good, Marcus.
And that conflict style, that's a major area that is a that people don't understand. But this is the thing. Once you learn that you have different conflict styles, that's not the end of the world. What you need to do is you need to learn how to deal with that particular reality of your relationship and of yourself and start correcting it.
So Marcus, you know, it's funny that we got on this communication topic, right? Because, you know, we could talk all day about these concepts and these theories, right? I think it's so important to try to relate them to real life situations, which we are, because obviously Gottman has done so much research, right? But to give you a personal experience, you know, there was this young lady that, you know, I was attracted to and I was interested in, and, you know, I started to talk to her, and she has this habit of like making plans with me, but then not communicating with me that she's no longer available, right? And so what ended up happening is this past weekend, you know, we were supposed to go to this event, and she said that she was going to come. And you know, this has been I don't want to say an ongoing issue. It's just a red flag to me. Like, you know, we make plans, you don't call, you don't show, whatever, right? So anyway, we made these plans, and I was specific. I'm like, listen, you're coming out tonight, right? Yes. I'm going to see you tonight, right? Yes. Never called, never text, never showed up, right? And, you know, to me, that's a negative habit, right? And that's not something like I'm not going to change that in her. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something like it's and this is also important. It's not Gene's job to fix you. You understand what I'm saying? It's not my job. Like if this is who you are, I need to make a decision. Okay, do I want to deal with this? Not, and obviously I don't want to deal with that. But you know, communication is so vital in a relationship, right? Like, I mean, to me, and just it made me feel like, hey, maybe I wasn't important, maybe she's not interested, maybe, you know, it's not, maybe I have a different perspective of where we're going than she does. And then I try to have a conversation with her about it, and she just didn't want to like really talk about it. Like, oh, you know, I don't know why you're upset that I didn't come out. We're only friends. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
so you're dealing with that's pretty inconsiderate, obviously, that she doesn't. So there's a habit there. It might be from whatever, and this is where we can go into, oh, it might be understanding her childhood, blah blah, and all this stuff. And when I deal with people that are married already, I would say, yeah, we need to figure out, because those end up being those perpetual issues. So if we go into the perpetual issues versus solvable issues, 69% of the issues that relationships will have will turn out to be perpetual issues, which will mean that they'll argue about it over and over and over again. And these are the things about finances, kids, and being late, leaving clothes, all these different things that couples will argue over and over again. Now, you set a boundary. That's good. That's what you need to do. And she doesn't want to talk about that boundary. She doesn't want to explain why she has that. And so then, therefore, you might not be compatible at this basic level. And it's finding out those things that people don't usually find out before they're together, or if they do, they ignore them, because it's kind of like, oh, that's okay. That's just a little quirk. Is that quirk going to bother you later on? Like 20 years down the road? And if it is, then you got to figure out how to, because that's probably going to be something that you're permanently going to be talking about over and over and over.
No, not
So
me, not Gene. No, no,
yeah,
no,
not
no.
we all,
Somebody else
but
can deal with
Gene,
that.
we all have these in our relationships. It doesn't matter, and we all view things differently. Sometimes we view things that are, for example, do I think that my wife is beautiful without makeup? Yes, I do. I think she's very beautiful, but she will wear makeup because since she was a child, she's been wearing makeup since she was like a teenager. And to her, she finds it necessary. She won't even go out to the store really. And many women are the same way. This is not uncommon.
Wow,
It
this is new to
is
me.
many women will, and they'll have, and the issue is that as men, we're like, well, oh, well, you know what? I find her beautiful anyway, and I want her to feel beautiful. And we're trying to do something nice by saying something like that. But to her, it's like, well, she's making the effort to actually make herself beautiful on a daily basis. So instead of focusing on the fact that you find her beautiful or all that stuff, which it's a good intention of what you're trying to say, how about focusing on the fact that she's a person that takes care of herself, that is concerned with her, with how her appearance in some way. I mean, would you rather be somebody that doesn't shower and doesn't do anything and just wears, yes, makeup, lingerie, clothes, all those things are made to enhance the beauty, not to make the beauty. But still, it's
Say that one more
what
time,
are you
though, Marcus.
focusing
That
on?
was important. That was important. Say that one more time, Marcus. The
make
clothes, the
Makeup,
makeup.
clothes, lingerie, and all those things are made to enhance the beauty, not to make the beauty. It's just so the issue then becomes, where's your focus? If you can focus on the fact on the good sides of what she's doing, as opposed to, and I'm just saying she because we're talking about
In general,
this,
right.
yeah, in this dynamic. It's the same thing the other way around, but it's focusing on what is positive about maybe some of the things that you find negative in your partner.
But that's hard. But Marcus, you know what? And just to be transparent, at the end of the day, we haven't really been seeing each other that long.
Oh yeah,
For
no, I didn't mean, I meant in general. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's too early in the relationship for you to be pulling this kind of stuff. And she's a great girl. She's sweet. She low key apologized, but it just left a really bad taste in my mouth where I'm just like, I don't know. And it's not like it's the first time it's happened. You know what I'm saying? Like it's happened before. Just this time it was like, okay, like obviously, you know, there's an issue there. I don't think it's the fact that she doesn't, it's like she's not attracted to me or she doesn't like me. It's just something personally that she has going on that she needs to deal with, which is the lack of communication or consideration for somebody else. And it's just like, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago when we were talking about connection versus chemistry, right? And when you see these issues come up in a relationship, you have to make a decision. Like you see these red flags, are we going to continue with the red flag? Are we going to ignore the red flag, right? Because if you ignore it, listen, my guy, you already knew this is who she was. You know what I'm saying? And you got in a relationship with her, right? And now she's being true to who she is, and you're getting upset. So I was saying she's being true to who she is, right? And you decided to take her with the red flags, and now that she's displaying these things, you're getting upset. Who's the selfish one? I think it's the like you already knew you was getting involved in. So
the only thing you can, there's only two things you can do as a partner in a relationship. You can either change yourself or accept. You can accept or change, and do them both. I mean, but you can't change your partner. You can only accept them. You can change yourself. And so your partner has to be willing. This is what happens in good relationships, or I don't want to call them good relationship, but relationship masters is the way that they define them in the research. the relationship masters, they are able to communicate and understand each other in a way where they're not taking offense to what the other person is doing. So just because the other person is having a bad day doesn't mean that I have to have a bad day as well. I can understand that they're having a bad day. If somebody comes up negative all the time, then you're going to get a trigger that when they're around, you're going to be negative. So that starts creating triggers as well. So those are habits that you have to be careful you're not forming within your relationship as well, because you form those all the time. Just like triggers are being formed in the positive, where you can form triggers in the positive, they're also being automatically formed in the negative many times.
So Marcus, you were talking about how Gottman was doing research on these couples 20 plus years, and he came up with he can look and he can sit with a couple 15 minutes and give a 90% accurate rate if this couple is going to last or not. Now, we don't have much time, but can you give me one example of a trait that he would say this couple, or we could do two?
There's actually six. There's actually six traits that show.
Is it six on each side, like six positive?
It's seven. It's 7 principles to make a marriage work, and it's 6 traits that actually lead to divorce. And so,
all right, so let's talk about trait 1.
Yep. So trait 1 would be the Four Horsemen.
Yes.
Those are, and we've talked about those, and not to get too in depth, it's basically criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And many times when men are stonewalling, it leads them to what's called flooding. And so that's number 2, the flooding. And flooding means that basically your emotions go so high, and for men it's a lot more difficult, but it goes, your pulse is more than 100, and your pulse ox is less than 95. Most people are not monitoring their vitals while they're having an issue. So the way that you can tell is if you're having an issue, being able to concentrate, if you're going over the same issues over and over in your head, if you're having an issue, just being able to communicate, you're probably flooding already. So the only solution to flooding is to stop the fight right there, to go on to separate things, distract yourself with something else besides the fight, and then schedule time to get back together. So the other one is harsh startup. A harsh startup is 96% of the time, the way that you can predict the outcome of a conversation is based on how it got in the first 3 minutes of how it started. So if you start a fight with a criticism, or you start a fight with defensiveness or contempt, it's probably going to end up the same way. And it's easy to start fights that way. We don't realize how many times, because we usually tend to blame the other person for how we're feeling. So we say things like, well, you make me feel angry because you did this, right? And that's not a good way of fighting starting a fight, because that's criticism. You're criticizing them, you're blaming them for your emotion. You can say, I feel angry, and many times it's because I feel when you do this particular thing that I get, and you can explain why you feel that way as well, and you get deeper. So, but it's starting with a criticism right away, like you this, you that, it ends up in a bad situation. So that's the third one. Fourth one is him looking at body language. When he looked into, when he would do the studies, they would actually videotape the couples together, just interacting together, and they could read their body language. They actually even broke it down to milliseconds, and he had his graduate students reading body language by the, I think it's called FACS, which is based on Ekman's work, which is, they did a show on Ekman called Lie to Me, I think it was. It was kind of like a series, and it was a dramatized version of Ekman's work. So number 5 is failed repair attempts. If you have somebody that we talked about before, when we talked about repair attempts, those kind of things that we try to do to try to get the fight back into control and get you back connected, those are failed repair attempts. And the last one ends up being bad memories. And this is more of a symptom again, because what happens is we start looking at the past and trying to reason what's happening right now. And we all even go even to before our marriage, and we'll show ways in which we had signs that there was going to things go wrong anyway. And so we start looking at our memories in a negative way instead of looking them in the positive way. So those are the 6 things that helped him be able to predict divorce. And
Now,
so we deal with a lot of those.
And this is the first part of it, though, right? This is not the 7. This is just part 1 of 7.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's dealing with what makes marriages work, and then there's dealing with what makes marriages fail. Because just because you take away the things that makes marriages fail, which is like the fighting, the conflict management, and you teach them how to deal with that better, doesn't mean that immediately the things that make marriages work are going to be implemented. Actually, they won't, because they didn't have them to begin with. A lot of times they didn't have those habits implemented. So to think that just because you take away the fighting, that then everything is going to be okay, is it's a big myth, because now you have to actually put the good habits into place. And it's not just the conflict resolution. So there's actually, and they're based on friendship, on building your friendship.
You see, you said the friendship part several times in this call, Marcus. So that is,
yes,
that's important. Well, Marcus, I got 5 minutes, right? But what I would love to do moving forward, next week, I would love to dive more into the stonewalling, and then get into the harsh startup, the flooding, the body language, the failed repair attempts, and the bad memories. I would love to just use an episode to go through all of that. I think rituals are really, really important. You know, I like what you said in the beginning, and I'm gonna piggyback on what you said. You know, a ritual is something you do regardless how you feel. Regardless how you feel, right?
Yep.
When I come to the gym, there have been several times, Marcus, where I'm like, I don't feel like coming to the gym. You know why? Because I was dealing with some BS. Mentally, I wasn't in the game. Physically, I wasn't in the game. But I made a commitment to myself, regardless how I feel. And that's hard to do. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's when you're in your feelings, man, it's hard to stick to the habits. But, man, every single time I come to the gym, especially if I'm having a bad day, which I don't want to come, but that's when I really need to come.
Yep.
I work out, man, and I feel so much better. And I would imagine it's the same thing in relationships, right? If you have a ritual,
definitely,
that, you know, you're going to come into the house and hug your spouse and kiss your spouse before you bring up anything, regardless it might be hard for you one day coming from work, get into an argument with your boss, and you know what I'm saying? But you gotta, it's the difference between motivation and discipline. Right, motivation is more of a feeling thing, right? Like you know, people do things because they're motivated, but then when the motivation goes away, you know, no, that's we're too finicky if we do that, right? You have to say, regardless,
and especially in our relationships, we want these to last for a lifetime, don't we? And then we just want to just let it happen. We work on so many other things in our lives, on so many other skills, on learning so many other things. And then it's just like, oh, my relationship, that should just happen because we should just be compatible. And it doesn't work that way. It's just an insane thought.
All right. Well, Marcus, I got to go.
Okay.
Before I leave you, where can people find you and how can they get in touch with you?
Yes. They can just call our office, 845-566-0568. But if they want to go, I can leave, I don't have my link right here, but it's drmrelationships.com. And that'll take them to actually one of the classes that we're doing. The homepage will probably be the 7 principles.
Say that one more time. It's Dr. M?
drmrelationships.com.
Got it. All right, Marcus. Before I go, I know you're going to be doing your health mental minute tomorrow, but before we go, what advice would you have for couples to focus on this week? One thing that you would
Yep.
encourage them to focus on this week.
Focus on just finding some rituals of connection this week, and connect with each other, and making them rituals that you do on a regular basis.
Yes. All right, Marcus. Love you, my brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here, love you too. Talk to you.